Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is great to have you with us.
It's great to be here.
Today, we're doing something a little different, something that feels a bit like reading a thriller novel before it's actually been published. We are stepping into the timeline of the now, but a now that feels like it's just vibrating. We're taking a massive stack of sources. We've got strategy papers, on-the-ground reports, some pretty intense intelligence analysis, and we're looking at the world as it stands in late January and early February 2026.
It is February 2026, and I have to say, looking at these documents, vibrating is maybe the polite word for it.
Right.
The world feels heavy. It feels like the air before the thunderstorm.
Yeah.
You know, that static charge.
Exactly. You read these sources, specifically the analysis coming from the source that's identified as Barackface, Paramendra Kumar Bhagat, and you get this very distinct sense that we are standing on a ledge.
A precipice.
So to set the scene for everyone listening, It is February 2026. The Middle East isn't just simmering, it's humming like a live wire that just fell into a puddle.
Tinderbox is the cliche, of course. But cliches exist for a reason, and this is it. We are looking at a situation where the United States and Iran are staring each other down with an intensity we really haven't seen in decades.
And it's not just posturing, is it? This isn't just diplomatic noise.
No, not at all. We have fleets moving, we have diplomats scrambling in secret locations, and most importantly, we have a regime in Tehran that looks like it's finally, truly backed into a corner.
And usually when we talk about Iran, we talk about the same old things. We talk about centrifuges, we talk about enrichment percentages, sanctions.
The usual playlist.
The usual playlist, exactly. And sure, that is part of the story today. But the hook for this deep dive is that we might be looking at something completely different. We might be looking at a Berlin Wall moment for the Islamic Republic.
That is the core argument running through this entire stack of analysis. The idea that we aren't just watching a diplomatic dispute, we are watching the potential structural collapse of a major regional power.
Which is huge.
It's tectonic. We're seeing a massive diaspora, millions of people trying to find its voice after decades of silence. We are seeing a secret blueprint for the day after the regime falls. And we're seeing the rise of what I think is your new favorite geopolitical analogy.
The honey badger. I cannot wait to get to the honey badger. It is the most perfect, terrifyingly accurate description of Russian foreign policy I have ever heard.
It really is something.
But we have to earn it. We have to wade through the heavy stuff first.
We do. And my role today is to be the wet blanket, or maybe the anchor is a better word. I want to take all that excitement and ground it in the harsh reality of the map, the economy, and the sheer brutality of what is happening on the streets.
Of course.
Because while the concepts are fascinating, the human cost, as detailed in these reports, is it's staggering.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the winter 2026 crisis. We're going to look at the secret talks in Oman, the revolution happening on the streets, the theology, which gets wild, and the end game.
Okay.
What does the day after look like?
Let's get into it.
All right. Segment 1, the diplomatic battlefield. So set the stage for us. It is February 2026. The headlines are screaming about war. But in a quiet room somewhere, people are talking. Where are we?
We are in Muscat, Oman. Now, this is significant in itself. Originally, there was a lot of chatter in the intelligence community about these talks happening in Istanbul.
Right. Turkey always wants to play the mediator.
They love that role. It puts them at the center of the map.
Mm-hmm.
But the venue shifted quietly to Oman.
And why the shift? I mean, is it just about better coffee, or is there something more strategic?
It's about noise control,
Yeah.
100%. Istanbul is loud. It's a media hub. Istanbul leaks.
Okay.
Oman has traditionally been the black box of Middle Eastern diplomacy. It's where you go when you actually want to get something done without the press breathing down your neck.
So it's the serious room.
It's the serious room.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they moved it there suggests that the stakes are incredibly high, and neither side wants to risk a public spectacle if or when it goes wrong.
But calling them peace talks feels like a stretch, doesn't it? Based on what's in these reports.
And it's a massive stretch. One of our core sources explicitly describes this as negotiation as warfare.
Negotiation as warfare. That implies you aren't there to shake hands and find common ground. You're there to scout the terrain.
You're there to probe for weakness. Exactly. And you have to look at the context. While these diplomats are sitting in air-conditioned rooms in Muscat, what's happening just outside?
Things are getting hot.
Very. The U.S. Navy just downed an Iranian drone near the USS Abraham Lincoln. We have multiple reports of Iranian Revolutionary Guard gunboats aggressively harassing U.S.-flagged tankers in the Strait of Hormuz.
So they are sitting at the table, but they have their hands on their holsters.
They have their guns drawn under the table. And this tension, this reality, it bleeds directly into the agenda of the talks. Or I should say the two completely separate agendas.
The red line.
The red lines. And they are fascinating because they show a complete and total disconnect in reality between the two sides.
Okay, let's break these down. What is Iran bringing to the table? What do they want to talk about?
Iran's position is what you might call maximalist narrow.
Maximalist narrow, okay.
They want to talk about one thing and one thing only, the nuclear files. Their entire argument is, we freeze enrichment, you lift sanctions, end of meeting.
That's it.
That's it. They're using the concept of sovereignty as a shield. They are explicitly saying, do not talk to us about our ballistic missiles. Do not talk to us about Hezbollah or Hamas. And definitely under no circumstances do you talk to us about what is happening on our own streets.
It's classic. Stay out of our business. Just give us our money.
Precisely. That is their entire platform.
And the U.S. We're talking about the Trump administration in 2026 here. I can't imagine they are just accepting those terms.
Not even close. It's the polar opposite. The U.S. position is incredibly broad and aggressive. They are saying nuclear is just the appetizer. It's the price of admission to the real conversation.
And the main course is?
Everything. The U.S. delegation is authorized to put everything on the table. They want to discuss the ballistic missile program, which is terrifying Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states. They want to discuss what the source calls the three H's, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis.
The proxy network. The agents of chaos.
The entire architecture of their regional influence. And this is the kicker. The U.S. is putting human rights and internal repression right at the center of the agenda.
Which, for the Iranian regime, is a complete non-starter.
It's an existential threat. They view that as a direct assault on the foundations of their power. They cannot and will not discuss it.
So if the agendas are totally fundamentally incompatible, I have to ask the basic question again. Why are they even talking? Why waste the jet fuel to fly to Oman?
This brings us right back to that phrase, negotiation as warfare. The source is very clear on this. The West, and specifically the U.S., isn't expecting a breakthrough. They're not there to sign a treaty.
They're on a different mission.
They are conducting reconnaissance.
Unpack that for me. What kind of reconnaissance can you do in a negotiating room?
It's psychological. It's political. Imagine you're sitting across from this Iranian delegation. You're watching their body language. You're listening to their tone, which words they emphasize, which topics make them nervous.
You're trying to figure them out.
You're trying to figure out who is the technocrat who just wants the sanctions lifted so he can fix the power grid and stop the riots, and who is the ideological fanatic who would rather burn the entire country to the ground than compromise 1 inch.
You're mapping the cracks in the regime.
You are looking for the fault lines, because if or when the regime collapses, you need to know who you can call. You need to know who the adults in the room are, who might be salvageable in a post-theocracy Iran.
That's fascinating. So the talk itself is a form of intelligence gathering, a cover.
It's that, and it's also a stalling tactic, a way to buy time. And the source mentions a very specific economic strategy that's happening in the background, parallel to these talks.
What's that?
The West is stockpiling oil reserves.
How much are we talking about?
The figure in the reports is about 4 weeks' worth of global supply.
4 weeks? That is a massive, massive amount of oil.
It's an astronomical sum. But think about the why. If these talks fail and things go kinetic, if the Strait of Hormuz gets closed, even for a few days,
Gas prices go to the moon.
they don't just go to the moon, they destroy economies. You'd see recessions ripple across the globe. So by stockpiling, the West is buying an insurance policy. They're trying to insulate themselves against the economic shock of a potential war.
So they're padding the walls before the fight starts.
Exactly. And there is one more layer to this whole diplomatic game, and it might be the most important. Legitimacy. The source makes a powerful argument that the West must be seen as reluctant warriors.
Reluctant warriors. That sounds like a line from a movie, but I get it.
It's ancient strategy, right? In the modern 24/7 news cycle world, you cannot just launch a war. You lose the narrative instantly. You look like the aggressor.
So you have to prove you tried everything else first.
You have to prove it to the world, to your allies in Europe, to neutral powers in Asia, and most importantly, to your own voters. You have to be able to stand up and say, look, we went to Oman, we sat at the table for weeks, we offered them a way out, they refused.
You have to exhaust diplomacy to justify force.
You have to make the other guy look like the unreasonable one. It's all about capturing the moral high ground before you even think about capturing the physical ground.
It's a cynical but very necessary high-stakes game of poker.
That's the perfect description.
But while the diplomats are bluffing and raising in Oman, the reality for the average Iranian is rapidly, terrifyingly deteriorating.
This leads us right into segment 2, the Winter 2026 Uprising.
Yes. This is where the story shifts from the abstract, the strategic, to the visceral and the human.
The sources give us a very specific start date for this crisis, December 28th, 2025. I mean, in the timeline of this episode, that feels like just yesterday. What pulled the trigger? What was the spark?
It wasn't a political speech. It wasn't a scandal. It was the price of bread.
Pure, brutal economics. The Iranian rial, their currency, essentially collapsed. It became worthless paper overnight.
We've seen inflation there before, though. It's been a problem for years.
Not like this. This was a cliff event. The data in these reports shows official inflation hitting 52%. But on the street, for necessities, it was much worse. Food prices surged 60 to 70%.
70%. I mean, just pause and think about that for a second. That's not an inconvenience. That's a catastrophe. You go to the grocery store on a Monday, and by Friday, you literally cannot afford to feed your kids.
It pushes people past the point of fear. It pushes them into raw survival mode. And that is why this uprising evolved so differently so quickly. It started as protests about, we are hungry.
A basic human need.
But because the regime has no answer for the hunger other than bullets and batons, it instantly, almost spontaneously shifted to death to the dictator.
It went from an economic grievance to a demand for regime change in a heartbeat.
In a single day, in some cities. And the scale. We need to just sit with these numbers for a second because they are horrifying. The sources, compiling reports from activists on the ground, estimate over 36,500 deaths.
36,500. That is not a crackdown. That is a civil war.
It is a massacre.
Yeah.
There are credible reports of mass arrests, torture centers filling up beyond capacity. There's a specific mention in one document of a coordinated massacre on January 8th and 9th, 2026. 2 days of just absolute carnage across the country.
The source uses a phrase that really stuck with me. It's a terrifying image. Goons on motorbikes.
It's a very specific tactical choice by the regime. They deploy the buses. These are the paramilitary ideological enforcers on motorcycles.
Why motorcycles?
Because they're fast, they're nimble, and they're terrifying. Imagine swarms of bikes, hundreds of them, engines revving, weaving through crowds at high speed. The riders are armed with machetes, with heavy chains, batons, sometimes machine guns.
It's designed for terror. It's chaotic. It's loud. It bypasses roadblocks.
It's designed to break the psychology of a crowd. If you are standing in a square, feeling the power of the group, and a phalanx of motorcycles charges directly at you with machetes, your instinct is to run, to scatter. It's shock and awe at a street level.
But the source says something different is happening this time. A phrase they use is that the fear barrier has broken.
That is the Berlin Wall moment we hinted at in the intro. In previous uprisings, you think back to 2009, 2019, even parts of 2022, when the bikes came, the people scattered. But the reports from January and February 2026 are different.
What are they describing?
They describe crowds standing their ground. They describe people setting up tripwires. They describe people pulling the riders off the bikes and seizing their weapons.
Fighting back. Actively fighting back.
And there is a statistic here that proves it. 114 security personnel killed. That is a massive number for a protest movement. It signals that this is a two-way fight now. The people have reached a point of desperation where they've realized if they go home, they starve. So they might as well fight.
It reminds me of that famous saying, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. This feels like those weeks.
It does. And the geography of this is crucial. This is not just wealthy kids in North Tehran protesting for more social freedom. This is happening in over 60 cities across all classes.
All over the country.
And it's deep in the ethnic enclaves. It's in the Kurdish regions. It's in the Balak regions on the border with Pakistan. The sources say the Balaks are fighting particularly hard with incredible ferocity. It is a nationwide, unified rejection of the entire system.
So how does this compare to the woman life freedom movement of 2022? That felt like a huge moment.
That movement was a cultural watershed. It was profoundly important. It changed the mind of the nation about the legitimacy of the regime's social rules. But winter 2026 is an existential struggle for the body of the nation.
So 2022 is for the soul, 2026 is for survival.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. It's about bread, land, and survival. It's more desperate, and therefore it's more violent on both sides.
Now, when you have a conflict this deep, this existential, it's never just about economics or politics. It hits people in their core beliefs, in their souls. And this brings us to segment 3, the elephant in the room. We have to talk about ideology and theology.
We do. And before we dive in here, we need to frame this very carefully for you, the listener. We are analyzing the specific and very strong arguments made in the source material by Barackface. The author takes a very powerful, almost metaphysical stance on the root cause of this conflict.
Right. We are reporting on the source's analysis, not endorsing it as our own view. So with that in mind, the source introduces a concept called the anti-religion. That is a heavy, provocative term. What is the argument here?
The source argues that Western diplomats consistently fail because they are, by nature, secular. They think everything is a transaction. You give me this, I give you that. Money for peace.
A rational exchange.
A rational exchange.
Yeah.
But the source posits that for the hardline core of the regime, this is not a transaction. It is a spiritual war.
But not spiritual in a positive way, according to the text.
No, not at all. The source argues that the version of Islam that has been weaponized and enforced by the regime is a fundamental distortion. The text goes so far as to explicitly refer to it as being animated by a negative spiritual force. It uses the term the devil several times.
That is extremely strong language for a geopolitical analysis paper.
It is, and it's deliberate. The theological claim being made is that there's a crucial distinction between Allah, as defined by the regime's narrow, coercive interpretation, and the broader concept of an omnipotent God.
Okay, let's unpack that. That could sound confusing. What is the difference, according to the source?
The source argues that the regime's Allah is a construct that demands one thing above all else: blind, unthinking obedience. The command is obey, obey, obey. It is portrayed as a deity that cannot enter human history to liberate or create. It can only command submission from outside of history.
And the contrast is?
The source contrasts this with the concept of God whose essential nature is liberty, creativity, and love. A God who works within human history to bring about freedom, not subjugation.
So the political implication of this theology is what? If your God demands total submission, then your government will too.
Exactly. The architecture of the state becomes a mirror of the architecture of their theology. If there is no freedom in heaven, there can be no freedom on earth. The state becomes the enforcer of that total submission.
And the source connects this directly to the regime's foreign policy.
Yes, very directly. They argue this theology leads inevitably to what they call the tyranny of annihilation.
Meaning they don't just want to control, they seek the power to destroy.
Specifically, to destroy Israel. The source argues that this isn't just a strategic goal for them, a bargaining chip. It is a dark spiritual imperative. The ultimate act of submission to this particular version of God would be the annihilation of the other.
This leads to a very practical, if stark, diplomatic conclusion in the text, which they call achieving spiritual clarity.
This is the so what for the diplomats in Oman. The source argues that to succeed, you have to separate the misguided from the truly evil within the Iranian system.
And who are the misguided in this view?
The misguided are the people within the system. The bureaucrats, the soldiers, the functionaries who have been indoctrinated, who follow the rules, but are still capable of reason. They are the ones who, if the spell breaks, can come back to reality.
And the truly evil?
The truly evil, in the source's stark terminology, are those who are fully committed to this path of destruction. The ideologues, the true believers in this distortion.
And the argument is, you can't negotiate with them. There's no deal to be made.
You cannot. The source is adamant. You can talk to them to buy time. You can talk to them to gain the moral high ground, as we discussed. But ultimately, you cannot reach a rational, lasting compromise with a force that seeks your annihilation as a spiritual goal. They must be defeated.
It's a very binary, very bleak view, but it helps explain why the source believes the current diplomatic stalemate is absolutely inevitable. You are trying to use logic with people who are, in this analysis, operating on a completely different apocalyptic operating system.
Right. The source would say it's like trying to play chess with someone who thinks the goal of the game is to set the board on fire.
So Iran is dealing with this internal fire, this theological deadlock. But they aren't totally alone in the world. They have friends in high places, or maybe friends is the wrong word, enablers.
Accomplices might be a better term. And this brings us very neatly to segment 4.
The honey badger. Finally.
I knew this was the moment you were waiting for.
Okay, listen, for anyone listening who doesn't know, the source material compares Russia to a honey badger. And you have to picture this animal. For anyone who hasn't seen that old viral video. It's small, it looks kind of cute but skunky, and it is absolutely pathologically ferocious. It fights lions, it eats king cobras for breakfast.
And it has incredibly loose, thick skin, so if a predator bites it, it can literally turn around inside its own skin and bite back. It's almost invulnerable to conventional attacks.
And the source says, the U.S. is the lion, big, powerful, the king, and Russia is the honey badger.
It's a brilliant heuristic for understanding their foreign policy. Think about it. The U.S. is the lion. It's massive, it's powerful, but it's also obsessed with maintaining order. It wants to be the king of the jungle. It wants the ecosystem to function according to its rules.
And the honey badger?
The honey badger just doesn't care. The source captures this perfectly with a quote. It says, Russia's doctrine is essentially, who gives a shit?
Who gives a shit? That's an actual geopolitical strategy.
It is the ultimate strategy of the spoiler. The source argues Russia knows it can't compete with the U.S. head-on. Their GDP is tiny in comparison, maybe 1/10 of America's. They can't outproduce America. They can't win a beauty contest on the world stage.
So they play a different game.
A much uglier game. Their strategy is based on pain tolerance. They know they can't win by being better. They win by being able to suffer more and inflict more chaotic, unpredictable pain. They use their vast geography, 11 time zones of land, as a weapon. They just absorb hits and keep biting.
The source also mentions Russia acting as a negative space on the world map. What does that mean?
Yes. It's the sanctuary for the anti-West. If you are a country or an individual who wants to defy the lion, where do you run? You run to the honey badger.
Edward Snowden is the classic example.
Snowden is the perfect example, but the source drops in a really weird, specific, and very recent detail to illustrate the point.
The Elon Musk thing, I saw that.
Yes, Elon Musk's estranged father, making a high-profile visit to Moscow.
It sounds like a subplot from a weird spy novel. Why is that detail even in there?
Because it illustrates the point perfectly. Moscow has become this bizarre magnet for anyone who wants to poke the U.S. in the eye. It's a gathering place for the eclectic, the defiant, the disruptive, and the just plain strange. It signals that Russia is the place you go to be anti-American.
And crucially, this honey badger is actively helping Iran.
This is the axis of spoilers. It's not a formal alliance like NATO. It's a loose coalition of convenience. Russia and China are providing what the source calls hard power assets to Iran.
What does that look like in practice? What are they giving them?
It looks like high-resolution satellite intelligence. Imagine the U.S. Fifth Fleet is moving in the Persian Gulf. Russia can tell Iran exactly where every single one of those ships is in real time. That's a huge advantage.
It negates America's tech advantage.
It erodes it, certainly. It also looks like cyber support, helping them defend their networks and attack others. And it looks like complex economic lifelines, using their banking systems to help Iran bypass Western sanctions.
So the honey badger keeps the lion distracted and constantly bitten, so the lion can't focus its full attention on the snake in the corner, Iran.
That's a perfect way to put it. Russia doesn't need Iran to be a thriving, successful superpower. It just needs Iran to be a persistent, painful thorn in America's side. Every dollar, every hour the U.S. spends trying to contain Iran is a dollar in an hour it can't spend containing Russia and Ukraine or China in the Pacific.
It's a parasitic relationship, but it works for them. Okay, so we have the honey badger, we have the uprising, we have the diplomatic freeze. The obvious question a listener might ask is, if the regime is this weak internally and the U.S. is this strong externally, why not just invade? Why not do what they did in Iraq in 2003 and just end it?
And that question brings us to segment 5, the strategic calculus. And the answer is brutally simple. Geography is destiny.
The source uses a great phrase for Iran. It calls it a mountain citadel.
That is the most accurate two-word description you could possibly have. People often have this mental image of the Middle East as flat, sandy desert. Iran is not that at all.
So just how big are we talking? Give us a sense of the scale.
It is massive. Iran is larger than the state of Alaska. Think about that. And it is larger than Iraq and Afghanistan combined.
Wait, combined?
Combined, plus another 11% on top of that.
That is a mind-boggling scale to even think about occupying.
And it's not just the size, it's the terrain itself. On the west, you have the Zagros Mountains, which act like a gigantic shield wall. We are talking about multiple parallel ridgelines that go on for hundreds and hundreds of miles. In the north, you have the Alborz Mountains. In the center and east, vast, inhospitable deserts.
So you can't just drive a tank column straight to Tehran like they did to Baghdad.
You would be driving into a kill zone. Every mountain pass is a natural choke point. Every valley is a potential ambush site. A ground invasion of Iran would be a logistical nightmare that would make the war in Afghanistan look like a walk in the park.
The source says it would be a quagmire.
It would be a graveyard for armies. You would need millions of troops just to hold the major cities and roads. The American public has absolutely no appetite for that, and more importantly, the U.S. military knows it's a mathematical impossibility.
Okay, so a full-scale ground invasion is off the table. That's clear. But the source proposes a radical alternative. Total, decisive, and surgical.
Surgical is the key word. The entire argument is, you don't fight the Iranian army. You don't occupy the cities. You target the regime's nervous system.
And what is the nervous system of a regime like this? It's not the parliament building.
No. It's the command and control infrastructure of the organs of oppression. So the strategy is laid out in phases. Phase 1 is the intel negotiation cover we already talked about, using the talks to identify the key nodes and leaders.
Finding the targets.
Finding the targets. Phase 2 is the strike. In a very compressed time frame, maybe 48 to 72 hours, you use air power and special forces to hit the IRGC headquarters. You hit the besieged command centers in every major city. You hit the secure communication hubs.
You take out the people who are giving the orders to the goons on motorbikes.
Exactly. The theory is that the average goon on the motorbike isn't fighting for a deep love of the supreme leader. He's fighting for a paycheck, and because he fears his commander. If the commander is suddenly gone, and the paycheck stops clearing, and the orders stop coming, the goon goes home.
So the goal isn't to conquer Iran, it's to paralyze the regime.
To induce paralysis for a very short, critical window. Create a power vacuum. And in that vacuum, you bet on the Iranian people.
The millions of people already in the streets.
The idea is that the U.S. kicks the door open, but the Iranian people themselves have to be the ones to walk through it. It has to be an Iranian revolution, just like facilitated by a surgical removal of the oppressor's ability to coordinate and fight back.
That sounds great on paper. It's clean, it's quick. But we have seen this movie before in other places. The dictator falls, the statues come down, everyone cheers, and then 6 months later, you have civil war, you have chaos, you have a failed state.
The day after problem, the problem of what comes next.
Exactly. And this is where we get to segment 6, the diaspora and the day after blueprint. This is the part that usually gets ignored in these war games, but the source spends a huge amount of time on it.
And rightly so, because without a credible, detailed plan for the day after, you just trade one tyranny for another, or for anarchy. Now look at the assets you have to work with. You have a massive Iranian diaspora.
The source puts the number at 5 million people.
5 million people, mostly concentrated in North America and Europe. And these are, by many measures, some of the most successful immigrant communities in the world. We're talking doctors, engineers, tech CEOs, artists, academics. They are wealthy, they are highly educated, and they are Western aligned.
But the source calls their political state a paradox, the diaspora paradox.
Yes. They have all this potential power, the money, the skills, the connections. But for 40 years, they have been completely fragmented. You have the monarchists who want to restore the Shah's dynasty. You have Republicans who want a secular democracy like France or the U.S. You have various leftist groups. You have the MEK, which is a controversial group in itself.
So they've spent decades arguing with each other in coffee shops in Los Angeles and Paris instead of unifying.
The source has a great line for it. It calls it the loudest silence, because they make a lot of noise, but there's no single coherent voice coming out of it. They haven't been super organized.
But that seems to be changing in this 2026 scenario. The source highlights the role of Reza Pahlavi,
the crown prince, the son of the last Shah. Now, this is crucial because for years, the central debate was, does he want to be king? But the source notes a very strategic pivot in his positioning. He isn't running as a monarch by divine right. He is positioning himself as a caretaker.
The phrase used is leader of the national uprising.
Right. His pitch has become incredibly pragmatic. He's essentially saying, look, I'm not here to seize the throne. I'm here to use my name, my international recognition, to be a unifying figure. I will be the umbrella that stops the rain while we build a new house.
And his big proposition, the thing that unlocks the coalition, is stability first, vote later.
Exactly. He explicitly accepts the idea of a future referendum. He says, once the country is safe, once the streets are calm and the militias are disarmed, we will hold a free and fair vote. Monarchy or republic, the people of Iran will decide. And that is a huge concession that bridges the gap between the major factions.
And they aren't just relying on good vibes and a famous name. There is a specific blueprint. The source details a plan for the first 100 to 180 days after the regime's collapse.
This is the emergency phase, and I love the detail here because it's not just, and then we'll have freedom and puppies. It's structural. They propose creating 3 distinct transitional bodies to prevent a power vacuum.
Okay, walk us through them. What are the 3 bodies?
First, you have the National Uprising Council. You can think of this as your interim legislative body. It would be made up of representatives from all the diverse groups, the Kurds, the Balochs, the Azeris, the Persians, women's groups, labor unions. They make the interim laws.
Okay, so that's the legislature. What's next?
Second, the transitional government. This is your executive branch. They are the cabinet, they run the ministries, they make sure the hospitals have power, the ports are running, the food is being distributed, the day-to-day work of the state.
Makes sense. And the third?
Third is the transitional divan. This is the judiciary. They would handle legal disputes and presumably oversee the process of transitional justice for the crimes of the former regime.
So you have a government in a box, ready to go.
It has to be. You cannot have a vacuum for a single day. Vacuums get filled by warlords and extremists.
And they have some immediate day one reforms planned to signal that real change has happened.
Yes, very symbolic and powerful ones. The immediate abolition of the mandatory hijab. That's the big symbolic win that honors the spirit of the woman life freedom movement.
Of course.
Then the immediate repeal of all gender inequality laws. An immediate end to all media censorship.
The slogan they are using is also really powerful. We all know, woman, life, freedom.
They've expanded it. The new unifying slogan is Woman, Life, Freedom, Man, Homeland, Prosperity.
I like that. It's an attempt to unify the genders and connect personal freedom with national identity. It says, this revelation is for everyone.
It's inclusive. It brings everyone under the tent.
There is one more point in this blueprint that I think might be the single smartest and most important part, the idea of continuity.
This is the critical lesson learned from the disaster in Iraq in 2003.
Explain that.
When the U.S. went into Iraq, Paul Bremer instituted a policy of de-Baathification. They fired every single government employee who was a member of Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party.
Which was basically everyone who had a skilled job.
Exactly. They fired the teachers, the power plant engineers, the army officers, the doctors. And what did hundreds of thousands of unemployed, armed, and angry men do? They picked up guns and started a bloody insurgency that lasted for years.
A catastrophic mistake.
The Iranian blueprint says, do not do that.
So you keep the bureaucracy. You don't purge the government.
You keep the technocrats. You keep the guy who knows how to run the water sanitation plant for Tehran. You keep the air traffic controllers. You keep the traffic cops. You purge the ideological leadership, the evil commanders, the torturers, the IRGC generals. But you keep the machinery of the state running.
It's the Japan post-1945 model, not the Iraq 2003 model.
That's the perfect analogy. You remove the militarist ideological head, but you keep the skilled body intact to rebuild the country.
That feels like the most critical piece of the entire puzzle. It's the difference between a successful revolution and a total state collapse.
It is absolutely the key.
So let's dream for a second. Let's step into the final segment. Segment 7, the economic compressed spring. If they pull this off, if the diplomacy stalls, the surgical strike works, the popular uprising succeeds, and this blueprint for the day after actually holds, what is the prize at the end of all this?
The prize is one of the most significant and rapid economic booms of the 21st century. The source uses a fantastic analogy for it. It's called the compressed spring.
Explain that concept.
Iran is not a poor country. It is an incredibly rich country that has been artificially squeezed into poverty by 40 years of sanctions, corruption, and gross mismanagement. You have this massive, powerful economic spring that has been pushed down and held down for decades.
And if you take the weight off,
It doesn't just slowly rise.
Yeah.
It explodes upward with incredible force.
so what are the actual assets under the hood? What makes up that spring?
Well, first, it's a geological jackpot. It has the second largest natural gas reserves in the entire world, the fourth largest proven oil reserves. But it's so much more than that. It's the people.
The human capital.
The human capital is arguably its greatest asset. You have 85 million people. They're overwhelmingly young. There are highly educated, great universities, tons of engineers and scientists. They are incredibly tech-savvy.
And they're tired of being isolated from the world.
They are desperate to connect, to build, to trade. The source projects that if you simply remove the sanctions and allow Iran to normalize its relations with the world, you could see 12% annual GDP growth.
12%. That is Asian tiger economy numbers from the 90s. That's stunning.
It is double-digit expansion. The vision laid out in these papers is of a $3 trillion diversified economy within a decade. And you have to think about the location. Iran is the natural bridge between East and West, North and South. It sits right on the new Silk Road. It should be one of the world's great trade hubs.
And the source makes a very important point about who they would do business with. It's not about just flipping and becoming an American colony.
No, and that's a crucial part of the vision for a stable future. A free, post-regime Iran would do business with China. It would sell gas to Russia. It would partner with European firms and welcome American investment. It becomes a node connecting the global network rather than a black hole of instability.
And let's talk about the peace dividend. That feels huge.
It's almost incalculable. Think about the billions upon billions of dollars the current regime spends on its nuclear program. Think about the pallets of cash that get flown to Beirut to fund Hezbollah, the money that goes to Hamas, the missiles that go to the Houthis in Yemen.
It's an astronomical drain on their national budget.
It's a budget built for exporting revolution, not for building a nation. So what happens when you take all that money and you redirect it?
To the Iranian people.
You stop funding terror. And you start funding Iranian infrastructure. You build high-speed rail from the Caspian Sea to the Persian Gulf. You build world-class hospitals and universities. You roll out fiber optic internet to every village. The transformation would be lightning fast. It's money that is already there. It's just currently being spent on death instead of life.
Wow. It is such a stark, incredible contrast. You have the image of the goons on motorbikes with machetes on one side and this vision of a $3 trillion futuristic, connected economy on the other. And the entire country is standing right on that knife's edge, deciding which way to fall.
That is the precipice of February 2026, as laid out in these documents.
So we've unpacked the crisis, the players, the honey badgers, and the dreams. As we wrap up, what does this all mean for the listener? What's the big takeaway?
I think it means we are at a genuine hinge point in history. The choice facing Iran in this moment is the choice facing the entire region and maybe the world. Path A is the honey badger path. Isolation, pain tolerance, clinging to a bankrupt ideology and presiding over a slow, painful rot.
And path B?
Path B is the compressed spring, a chaotic, probably messy release. A period of uncertainty, but then an explosion of growth, creativity, and reintegration with the world.
The source ends with a really provocative thought about the nature of prophets.
Yes, the line is, prophets are defined by their prophecies.
Yeah.
The current regime has prophesied Islamic victory and greatness for over 40 years. They promised a divine civilization that would be a model for the world.
But look at what they actually delivered.
They delivered hyperinflation, isolation, brain drain, and hunger. Their prophecy has failed.
And when a prophecy fails?
The prophet loses his power. His narrative collapses. The source questions that entire narrative. If that story, that prophecy finally crumbles, if the people stop believing in the inevitability of the regime, then the entire map changes.
And that's our final question for you to think about. If this regime falls, does the geopolitical map of the 21st century get redrawn literally overnight?
It's hard to see how it wouldn't. The Russia-China-Iran axis loses its central pillar in the Middle East. Funding for terror groups across the region dries up. Global energy markets stabilize. Israel's entire security situation changes in a fundamental way. It is a completely different world on the day after.
It is a lot to process. We usually look at the news and we see just the static, a headline here, a tweet there. But when you stack the sources like this, you don't just see the news, you see the tectonic plates moving underneath.
And that is the value of the deep dive. You stop looking at the waves on the surface and you start looking at the tide. And right now, in February 2026, the tide is going out on this regime fast.
This was an incredible journey through a complex and frankly scary scenario. Thank you for guiding us through this minefield. It was dark, but there is a powerful thread of hope running through it.
There's always hope when people refuse to stay afraid.
And to you, the learner, thank you for joining us on this one. We hope this gave you that aha moment, a new way to see the board. Don't just read the headlines, read the map. Keep being curious, keep questioning, and we will see you in the next deep dive.